both places. We still have about 3 minutes before the session actually starts, but I wanted to come on and let everybody have time to get here before we actually begin. And while we wait just a second, I'm going to go ahead and start peeling carrots. I've got the majority of them done. And before I get going, I'm going to tell you about two things. The first thing I want to tell you is that we're doing two giveaways, and the giveaway is going to be the Rada meal prep set. There'll be 2 sets of these knives given away during this live session. We'll probably do one about 25 minutes in and one about, we'll say 45 minutes in. This is the set that will be given away during this. So it'll be the peeler, the super parer, the heavy duty parer, and the granny parer. And these ones, as you can see, have been well loved. I have a million of these. My oldest ones come from my great grandmother, and then I have tons left from my grandmother, and my mom buys it for me all the time, and I buy it for myself all the time. These black handle knives are the newer. This one is a Rada Anthem Wave handle, and this one is just a Rada Black. No, this one's an Anthem Wave too. I see the ridges in it now. But they do have black handle in this same style here too, but these are Anthem Waves. Okay, so first order of business, I want to be sure that we thank Rada properly. Y'all be sure that you're following them. They sponsored this for you guys. Be sure that you send them a message and say thanks for sponsoring this because I needed to learn to pressure can. And we put our affiliate link. This is one of only a couple of companies that we're willing to put our name beside of. And it's in our stories on Instagram. So if you're following us on YouTube, you probably found us from Instagram. But if you're not, it's at theappalachianhomestead.com on Instagram. And if you're over here on Instagram, we have a YouTube too. And you can find us there by typing in at The Appalachian Homestead in the search bar. That at symbol, The Appalachian Homestead. For Rada Cutlery, I can't tag them, but Mark can. It's at Rada Cutlery on Instagram and at Rada Kitchen Store on Instagram. And he'll be tagging them at some point during this. It wouldn't let me tag during this video for some reason. So be sure you're following them. Be sure to thank them. And it's now 4 o'clock, so we're going to get started. So these are the 4 knives we're going to give away. Not these ones. They'll be brand new for you, shipped from Rada. They sponsored that giveaway as well. So it's the peeler, the super parer, the heavy duty parer, and the granny parer come in that set. I am going to move these out of the way because right now I just got to do a little bit of peeling, and all I need is the peeler. And we're going to get started. If you have a question during this, the best place for you to ask it's going to be on Instagram because Mark will be moderating over there. He only has one device to moderate with, so we figured the largest part of the audience would be over there. If you have a question, you can click the question bubble that is at the bottom of your screen where you would type. There's a bubble there. It has a question mark in it, and I'll be able to find those questions easily so that we can go back and be sure we don't miss anything. But for right now, let's just peel these up. I only needed to do a couple to get ready. Okay. And those carrots have been sitting in water and had gotten a little bit slimy on me. But got one more to do here. And then we'll start filling our jars. That way, so we did a little, as always, a little TV magic. So we've got one canning ready to show you, and we're gonna walk you all the way through to pressuring on this one so that you don't have to watch this live for endless amounts of hours. All right, get all the junk off my cutting board. All right, so I'm going to show you Mark's favorite knife. Mark, yours is the super pair, is that right? Is it the bigger one or the smaller one of these pairs? He likes the longer one. So this is the one that Mark likes the best. You're going to cut just so you know, these have been washed. Now they've been peeled. Now we're just going to cut them up. And you want to make sure that your slices are less than 1 inch thick. I like mine about as thick as you see me slicing here. Hold on, I'll show you. So this is about probably 1/4 to 1/2, somewhere in that area. And that's how I like mine. And he likes to use this knife, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you my favorite knife. So my favorite knife to use, I like this one for peeling things and doing other stuff, but my favorite knife to use when I'm chopping is this one. It's my Anthem Wave Cook's knife. It handles in your hand so well. I'm gonna put these over in a bowl. All right. We'll be feeding the bunny rabbits these. And puppy dogs. Does your puppy dog like carrots? Now Mark likes it when I chop them a little bit bigger, thicker, I should say. You just want to be sure that you're getting less than 1 inch thick on your slices. That one's about 1 inch. These are about 1/2 inch.
But they're more narrow.
But they are more narrow at the tip. Remember, if you have questions, to put them in that little bubble that's got the question mark in it so that I can find them easy. All right. Now we're gonna fill some jars. So you can see I've got my carrots sliced kind of thick, thicker than you normally would for carrot coins, but not logs. Okay, so again, Mark's favorite, this is my favorite when I'm peeling these two, and I love the granny parer as well when I'm doing apples. This is my favorite when I'm chopping. This is the Anthem Wave Cook's Utility Knife. This is the Anthem Wave Super Parer. This is the Anthem Wave Heavy Duty Parer. Okay, now I'm going to show you one more time the ones that are going to be given away. The giveaway knives for today are these. The Rada Peeler, the Super Parer, the Heavy Duty Parer, and the Granny Parer. This is my favorite when I'm doing apples. These are my everyday knives. This is a 10 times a day tool for me, the peeler is. All right, let me grab my jars and my canning funnel. I posted the recipe for the brine for you in Substack, and it will be put into the description of both the YouTube and the Instagram caption. It's already in the YouTube one, I believe, and I will be adding it to the Instagram caption. Both of these will be saved for your future reference. That way you'll be able to come back time and again and use these recipes and walk through the steps. And this brings us to another important thing. So, pressure canning is intimidating to a lot of people. But here's what you need to know. You're not just learning to pressure can carrots today, because the rules of the game are the same no matter what the contents of the jar is. And we're going to go over those very quickly. So the number one thing is you always want to be clean. When you're canning, cleanliness is very important. So hands washed, countertops cleaned, washed. Everything that's going to be anywhere near your jars of food needs to be very clean. So our lids have been washed and they're brand new. Our rings have been washed, our jars have been washed, our hands, our countertops, all of our knives, etc. are freshly washed. Cleanliness is next to godliness. You want to be sure that you're super duper clean when you're canning. So those are the first and most important steps. Then your next steps are going to be to make your brine, which we have already done. But with other vegetables, you might not make a brine. You may just be adding spring water and a little bit of salt. As I said, the only thing that really changes is the contents of the jar, not the rules of canning. So if you wanted to can these carrots plain, you would fill your jar up, still leave an inch of headspace, and add a teaspoon of canning salt. Be sure it's only canning salt, not table salt ever. And I don't use mineral salts at all in canning either. Those can cause off colors and off flavors over time. So, and then you would put spring water in, leaving an inch of headspace, and put your lid and ring on. Okay, so we got this one done. So remember, always clean everything. Always wash your produce. Always wash all of your utensils that you're using. Everything clean and fresh before you begin, including your countertops. Then your jars clean. Your lids need to be new. You can use reusable lids. Tatler makes those, and I grew up on Tatler and really like them. And your rings, they can be older. You just need to make sure that they're in good shape. All right, let's get started ladling brine. Now, as we go, I'm going to tell you more steps of pressure canning, but those are the getting started steps. All right, so those are in. Now we're going to start ladling this brine in. So I call it brine. It's not really brine, it's syrup. This is total, what I've used here to do 7 quarts is about 14 to 15 pounds of carrots that were peeled and sliced, washed, peeled, and sliced. And the brine is about 8 cups of spring water, 8 cups of brown sugar, 4 cups of orange juice, and I do use store-bought orange juice because I want to be sure of the acidity in it, and I don't want it to have any pulp at all. And that's nearly impossible to do when you're doing it at home. So again, this syrup is 8 cups of water, 8 cups of brown sugar, 4 cups of orange juice. And this should be enough for the entire canning. If you have extra, you're just going to can this syrup. You'll pressure can it as a jar with no carrots in it. And then when it's time to make more carrots, you'll just open that jar and have the leftover syrup dumped in, and it'll be ready first. Okay, so here's this. Next step is going to be wiping the ring or the mouth of the jar. And you always want to make sure you're using a clean, fresh towel to do that. That's a little damp. Then I'm going to put my lid on it. And I'm just going to go, I'm not torquing it. You see how my hand slips and slides around it? It's hand tight. You can use, if you want to be more specific about it, you can use 3 fingers like this would do it, or just these 2 fingers would get it the correct amount of tightness. Just don't torque it down. Don't torque it. You'll end up with a bent lid and a failed seal. So that's how we're doing it. This is what it looks like once we're in the jar. So let's keep going. Now I see a question has come in. Let me address this. What's the difference between the metal and the black handles? So the metal handle, of course, is metal, and the black handle is I believe they said it's a polymer, but it's not a meltable. It's like a polymer steel with black, but I can't remember all the details. I don't work for Rada. I wish that they were here. But Mark wants me to tell you about the feel of it. You like the feel of the black ones better? Yeah. He likes the feel of the black ones better. I'm so used to the metal handle knives that they're just what I reach for, because that's the original Rada. The black handles are new. What I can tell you is I've had both black and silver, and they're both very durable. It's not plastic. You can't really damage it. The black handle knife, you can allegedly run through a dishwasher, but let me just go ahead and tell you guys, don't do that. Don't ruin your good knives by running them through a dishwasher. It doesn't matter what brand they are. Don't do that to them. Even if they say dishwasher safe, don't do that. That's a bad practice. Okay, so here's our next jar. Remember, if you have questions, to put them in that question bubble so that I can find them easy. So these jars I sliced up earlier, in case you're wondering where all these jars are coming from. I sliced them up about an hour ago so that you guys didn't have to endure watching endless numbers. Oops, I spilled some brine. Endless numbers of jars get sliced and diced. And I'll be honest, somebody asked me about making syrup if I ever run out. Sometimes I do. It's not very often that that happens to me. If it does, I just put in blanks, and then I make more syrup. If you make too much syrup, you just can the syrup. And I just spilled a whole ladle, so I hope that doesn't do me in. All right. Again, I'm just going, see how my handles slip around? I'm not torquing it down. I'm just putting it just tight enough. It will come easily back loose, 3-finger tight. And we're just gonna keep right on a going. Man, I hate that I spilled that. Do you ever have things like that happen to you? I guess no use crying over spilt brine now, right? Probably be exactly that much I'm short by now, right? Be our luck, it'd be okay. Be a good lesson for all of you guys to see how it is when you end up having to do a blank, Or if you were to run out of syrup, just fill it with spring water and put a teaspoon of canning salt in it and have regular canned carrots. I'm using 1 inch of headspace. Remember to put your questions in the question bubble because I'm not able to keep up with them in comments. So there's 1 inch of headspace. We're gonna wipe the rim. I do it like this. Some people do it with 3 fingers like this. However is most comfortable for you, but do not torque it down. Okay, let's get going. Remember to put your questions in the question bubble where the comments are. Don't put them in the comments because I won't be able to keep up with them. But I do see yours, Jess. If you want to do pines, do you add more water to the canner? If you stack a second layer, your canner has instructions with it and you'll follow those exactly. I don't ever stack, I always am doing quarts. When you have a big family, it's not practical to do pints of anything. But you can do pints and stack them. You'll just need to go by your specific canner's instructions. And each canner has a different thing in it regarding that. I think with All American, you don't have to add more water because it's the steam that's in there that's building up and creating that pressure.
Or the jar and brine water.
The jar is hot straight out of the dishwasher, and the brine has been boiled, and it's hot but not still at a rolling boil because we're pressure canning it. We're not water bathing.
Did you explain how much headspace?
I did put how much headspace. Mark's keeping up with you guys for me. Barely. So be sure that if you have a question, you click that bubble to the lower right hand side that has a question mark in it. There's another jar.
Another person asked if you were going to cook these for your husband tonight.
I'm not going to cook them for you. I'll get you a jar that's not still hot out of the pantry.
That's what I mean.
I guess I'm what you want with them. You don't know? You want fried rice with them?
Of course.
So
They're
Mark,
good for a dessert too. You don't have to, do it that way. I could heat up some for dessert later.
Mark's favorite way, these taste similar to the carrots that you get at a hibachi restaurant. And he loves when I make, what do you call it? Yaki, Mark? Is that what beef is?
Yeah. Or chicken. Or just this warmed up as a side is wonderful.
Can you guys hear him? He likes this any way he can get it. Glazed carrots are a favorite. My mom and dad love them too, and my brother. They called up and told me to make sure I canned enough to give them.
Almost there isn't a question bubble on it, not just track.
There's not a question bubble on in your
But I
Instagram?
can see all the comments. There's not any comments.
Mark's trying to keep up with you. If we miss anything, you can send us a DM.
Where did you get the big phone?
Oh, Lord, that belonged to Mamaw, didn't it?
I think so, and it's stainless steel and cleans up perfect. You can't
I have a
tell what it is.
canning set on my link tree. If you go to our Instagram and go to the link in our bio, and it'll have a canning funnel.
The
But
plastic is fine, but that stainless steel, I can't tell if it's a year old or 40 years old.
right, this is a million years old, and I have another smaller one over yonder it's much smaller than this one, and it has been used so much that it is about beat to death.
And the plastic ones are fine too.
Yeah, the plastic ones are
Especially
fine.
for jam and stuff.
I use the plastic ones that come in other canning sets too. But this particular one is from Mamaw. It's old.
Cleans up so well.
Yeah, it does. The stainless steel ones do clean up, and they don't stain. Yes, it does fit both regular and wide. I think all canning funnels do fit regular and wide. I don't think you have to have a different one. Okay. So this is, I believe, our last jar. 2, 4, 6. Yep, this is jar number 7. And here we go. Just leaving an inch of headspace. And one thing I haven't been doing, but you should do, so I'm going to show you this because it's best practice, is you need to burp your jar, especially if you've packed it tight. I did not. And I'll tell you my secret for it. I haven't shown it to you, but I'm going to tell you my secret for it. Hold on, I'll show you. Let me wipe my room again. You all, if you're beginners, use the knife and burp it, or you may have a new cannon set that came with the jar burper. Use it. Here's my old-timey mamaw hack. Hold on. All I do is take it and do this with it to burp it, and it'll bring it to the top, and then I just check it. Yep, headspace is still right. All right, Mark says it's about time for a giveaway. Are you gonna spin through and do the pick? Okay, I'm gonna move my stuff while he does puts the name on the people who are in attendance currently. I see a fruit fly getting on my head.
What am I doing?
I got a fruit fly over here I gotta get a hold of. Oh, spin through and pick a winner.
Yeah, okay. You said it the long way around. I think it's Janine Jelinek.
Janine who?
Quite sure. She's got a cute puppy dog on there.
Jeline K. Janine, he said.
The name's under it.
Janine Jelinek. He
Now,
said
how
is
does she claim it?
the winner. She needs to DM me her address, or she can send it by email to info@appalachianhomestead.org. Let me move this stuff out of the way, guys. Jeline Jelinek. Now I'm going to show you a canner. We're going to talk about the bits and pieces of a canner quickly. You can't see the whole thing, but the edge of a canner looks like this. These keep the lid on. This is the grip, because the lid top will go and lock under it like this. That's what keeps it on. This is the rack. This is the rack of the canner. Always make sure that you put it with this lip facing downward so that it creates space between the bottom of the canner and your jar. You see how I can stick my finger down in it? There has to be space there. That's how you keep your jars from fracturing. Okay, now let me move this and I'm going to show you the lid to a canner.
And that one's been through it, I'm sorry.
This is,
I've not scrubbed it.
so this is Mamaw's canner. And this is the kind that has the seal. Number one thing, you always, always, always need to be sure before you can that you have, that this is put in properly. You can see it here, and this does come out. And rub it with either a little bit of olive oil or a little bit of lard. That way your lid doesn't get stuck on. How long ago was it I had a canner get a lid stuck on? Oh, it broke my heart because it was my great-grandma's canner. And I forgot to grease this seal. And the lid got stuck on. I mean, they had to use a crowbar to get off. I didn't lose any jars of food, but I lost the canner. I kept the pot to it, though. So this is the inside of it, obviously. This is the outside, and you can see this one's 1,000,000 years old. It's a Miromatic. I don't even think they make a Miro anymore. This is a safety valve. Everybody worries about their canner blowing up. It can't. You see how loose this is? This, if it got too high in pressure, this would blow out and the steam would start to escape there. So you're not gonna blow your, here's the truth about blowing up a pressure canner. Number one, the stories are sensationalized. That doesn't happen that often. You just hear about it widespread when it does. Number two, it's because somebody has forgot they were canning. They either got on the phone and got busy and forgot they were canning. They fell asleep because I'll be honest, the sound of a pressure canner does make you sleepy because it's very rhythmic. Or they've gone outside to do something and then got distracted and done several other things and forgot about it, and before you know it, they've forgotten about it for an extended amount of time, like way, way longer than it was supposed to can. And bam, then it would happen. On a regular basis, it's not going to happen. Your pressure canner is not a bomb sitting in the corner of the room just waiting on an opportunity to blow up and hurt you. I promise. Okay. Now,
Give me that one to scrub.
give him this one to scrub.
Yeah.
All right, we have some TV magic because we have already canned some carrots so that you didn't have to watch an endless amount of,
Do you want it there?
yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Hold on, he's gonna move, we're gonna move everything over here.
Operation in progress here. This is real stuff.
Yep, there we go. Woo! So,
Hold on.
here's another thing. You have to let this sit for an hour, about 45 minutes to an hour, after, see how I touched it? And let the pressure come down on its own. Do not ever touch this after you've turned the heat off. You'll cause your jars to soften out. See how I'm moving it, no steam coming out?
It's still pretty hot.
It's hot, but it's
But
not
there's
so
no
hot you
steam,
can't
watch.
touch it.
No
See,
steam, no
nothing came out.
This will be sitting there, watch.
We've allowed this to sit for the proper amount of time. Now the lid will come off. Always open it away from yourself too. See how
You'll
he
get some
tilts the
steam.
lid away from himself? There's gonna be some steam. And here's our carrots.
Oh, it smells so good.
Now, this is just to show you what it's like when it finishes. Do you have the jar lifter, babe?
No.
I gotta show you guys something. I see this misused very often. If you're a first-time canner, these are the handles. This is what you lift the jar with. And do you have a small jar I can use to show them?
We got our bacon grease.
Yeah, give me that jar of bacon grease. Well, so we're going to just show you on this. When you're lifting a jar out of a canner, don't lift by, they won't be able to see it. Don't lift by this. Get down under this glass part right here, and you're going to lift by that. If you lift by this ring, it's hot. It's flexible. It could come off, and you could drop this jar and burn yourself. Lift underneath that little glass lip that you see right there. Now he's going to lift these jars out and move them onto a towel over on the table, and he's going to show you what he does. So he lifts with that under the glass. You got to come over here so I can see it. Then he puts a towel under it so that he's supporting it with his hand with the towel, and then he's carrying it with that jar lifter. Okay, I see questions coming in the question box. Okay, you learned something new today.
Something I used to have.
I answered this question. Keep her at home on the prairie. You should never put any knife in the dishwasher. It's terrible for them. They say, yes, it's dishwasher safe. I'm telling you, as your friend, don't ever put your knives in the dishwasher.
Get a good knife and take care of it.
Yeah, get a good knife and take care of it. And that means not putting it in the dishwasher.
Oops, sorry. I hit
Okay.
some.
You hit somebody. I think you hit YouTube. We answered the black handle. I'm going to delete.
Tallow to grease the seal.
Yeah, sure. You can use any kind of fat. You can use olive oil, lard, tallow. Don't use a ton. So if you're using a solid fat, it's literally going to be a quarter teaspoon or less. It's just a smidgen. It's just a
a rubber seal,
smear.
really.
And you're just rubbing it on with a clean cotton cloth. Okay, so remember what I told you, don't ever put your knives, I don't care what brand of knife you have, don't put it in your dishwasher. That's terrible. It makes your things not last
It's
good.
not good for the blade. Even
Yeah,
if
it's
the
terrible
handle
for
can
the
handle
blade.
it.
If you steward things well, they'll last for generations, guys. Let's see here. How long will the quartz pressure can for? 30 minutes. And we're gonna get there. Just hold on. Okay, so this is what it looks like coming out. And then we're gonna reload this canner. I thought this was an important part for you to see, that you can reload the canner that you've already been using.
If I don't have it right, doesn't feel perfect, I just don't take it too far and fix again. Do
Right.
not want to drop
I
it.
hear jars starting to seal. Did you hear that little sound? That's the jars starting to seal. Once you hear that sound, you'll never forget that sound. Does anybody have any trouble with sound?
All right.
If anybody else is having trouble with sound, tell me.
I've only saw that once. She mentioned cell service.
Okay. She's the only one saying no sound. Okay, just making sure. All right, so now still have the water in there. This is about 2 inches of water in the bottom of my canner.
And it'll rise.
Read your canner's instructions. As the jars go in, it's going to displace the water just like displacement works. And the water will rise up the jars. And you just want your water to end up about halfway up your jars. All right, I see nobody else is having trouble with sound. It's been a real bad time for a lot of people lately. We could use maybe a little more water in here. No. No, it's
You're
about
only going
halfway up.
30 you're only
It's
going-
about halfway up,
If
yeah.
you were canning meat, it's going to take longer and lose more steam.
Yeah, if you're
Maybe.
canning meat, put it more like 3/4 the way up. We're only
This
doing
is
these for
30
30 minutes. Okay. Now, the lid has already been greased. I'm gonna move out of the way. He's gonna put it on and lock it on. Will you put it on, please?
Yes. And I always put the safety valve away from me, so when I put it on the stove, it's facing back towards the wall.
Yeah.
Get it on, feel it go down. It locks.
Yes.
Well, it's locked this way, and then once steam gets pressure in it, it will lock this, and you couldn't take it off if you tried, because it's got a little
Yeah,
locking
there's
mechanism.
a safety locking mechanism inside this. And on an All-American, you're going to, let me move this stuff over. I gotta move you guys over so you can see what's happening. 1 second. Woo! Take you for a ride, guys. Is that okay? I see that. Hold on, now I gotta move the other camera. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. Woo. When we're live in 2 places at once, it's a little more difficult.
I need to reinitialize the satellites.
Reinitialize the satellites, sir. I gotta get this one situated.
And it's going to take a while.
Okay, let me get it. Let me get you guys here. All right. There we go. Okay, so it has been moved on to the eye. The lid's locked on. This pressure valve for emergencies, the oh my gosh, I'm gonna blow up valve, is towards the wall. The heat is on beneath this canner, and we're gonna wait, and we're gonna wait for the, hold on. We're gonna, hold on.
You can't do that.
I can't do that. We're gonna wait. He was showing you how to put the lid on and we didn't take it back off. You're gonna wait till it comes to a boil in here before you put that lid on. Then you're gonna put that lid on like he showed you. And you're gonna let that steam come out the pressure valve and then put your weight on. Give me just 1 second. It'll take a minute for it to boil. And while we're doing that, Mark's gonna cruise for questions. And I'm gonna tell you about, yes, so the syrup I put in was hot. And the jars were hot out of the dishwasher. The lids have been washed. You can go back and watch the whole thing to begin with.
How do you make the brine? Did you tell me that? So, did you tell me that?
I put the brine, yeah, the brine recipe,
Syrup.
the syrup recipe. I shared it in my stories. I put a link to it. And I also told you on this video, and I'll get and tell you again right now. So everybody grab your paper and pen if you want to know how to make this syrup. So for one canning, you're gonna need about 13 to 14 pounds of carrots, washed, peeled, and washed again. You're gonna need to make the syrup. It's 8 cups of spring water. We don't use tap water for canning, guys. You don't want to can chemicals into your food. 8 cups packed of brown sugar. 4 cups of orange juice with no pulp. You're going to put the water, brown sugar, and orange juice into a kettle and bring it to a boil to melt the sugar into the syrup and get everything all nice and together. Then you're going to take your clean jars and you're going to put your clean carrots into it, and then you're going to ladle that brine in. You're going to wipe the rim, put your lids on. Remember how I did it, just tight like that, not torqued down. And then you're going to put them into the canner, water halfway up the jar. Now we're bringing it to a boil. Once this comes to the boil, the lid will go on and we will proceed. So it's going to take just a few minutes. Okay, how do you add the water? We go halfway up the jar. Your pressure canner will have instructions with it. It's usually 2 inches in the bottom of the jar, or in the bottom of the canner before you add the jars. And as you add the jars, the water displaces and it ends up about halfway up. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions.
How will you
I
use this
see.
when you get them out?
Do what now?
How will you use the carrots when you're ready to eat them?
When I'm ready to eat them, I'll take the lid off and dump them in a kettle, syrup and all, and heat them up. You can add butter if you want to. You can also drain them if you want to, and put them on your hibachi top. We have a steel-made flat top, goes the entire width of our range, and we also have one for our grill. And you can do it that way, or if you have a Blackstone, whatever that you want to use. You can do it like hibachi carrots. That's what they taste like.
This is a cheating way to get your kids to eat vegetables right here. Check 'em.
Our water filter, we don't use the popular one. So we have spring water that comes from our own property that is naturally filtered through a coal seam. It's naturally carbon filtered, but then we also filter it through another filter. And I'm not going to talk about brands. We're just not doing that here. Today, the only brand we're focused on is Rada. You can buy spring water too if you don't have access to a natural spring. Okay, let me make sure I don't miss anything anywhere else. Remember, if you have questions, to put them in the question box. It's a bubble that has a question mark on the right hand side of your screen where you would type in your question. Do you have a source for spring water, or do you purchase jugs? I just answered that one, I guess, unintentionally. We have, our whole compound is spring fed. And the spring is, Lord, I mean, that spring's been there probably since the beginning of time. I don't know. But it's old, old, old. And one day, if you want to, we'll talk about spring water, and I'll tell you about how to build a spring box and how to collect it and how to pipe it and all the cisterns and all the things, but that's not today. Today's topic is canning. And you can buy spring water and then filter it in whatever filter you like. You go right ahead and do that. But don't can with tap water from a municipal source, and don't can with well water. It's not the same. Well water has minerals and things in it that make the taste off and also will affect the quality. Yes, so you want to see about greasing the seal. Mark, come over here.
Greasing the steel.
The seal. He'll do it for you. Just grab a little olive oil there, Mark, on your finger. He just takes his finger literally and gets just the tiniest bit. Hold on. He's gonna get a little dish to pour it in.
I don't use my finger.
You don't use your finger?
No.
I do. I use my finger.
I know.
He's gonna use a basin brush.
Where's this? Where's
Put it
that?
over.
It's got a point on
I'll hold it for you.
it. And not much oil. You don't want it slathered, but just a little.
You just, yeah, there you go. Just a little olive oil or whatever you want to use. If you use a solid fat, just put it on your fingertip and rub it along.
A little tiny bit, because oil spreads on rubber easily.
Yeah.
It makes it come off good.
Mm-hmm. All right, you can sit that back.
That's it.
I see another question came in. Let's see about this. The carrots do look good, Sharon. Thank you. They're so yummy. Okay, so now we're just getting to, so we're on, just so you know, high heat so we can get to this boil. And it's almost time to do the second giveaway here in about 10 minutes, I think. I'm going to scroll up while we wait on this to come to the boil. Make sure I don't miss anything. Is it always half full with water to can vegetables and 3/4 full for meat? Yeah, I mean, when we're canning vegetables, your canner should have instructions with it. This canner is older than me. It came from my, Mark said it's older than paper. This is my grandmother's canner. This is my favorite canner to use. I use it 10 times a week at the minimum. But so I don't have paperwork for this. You as a new canner, you're gonna have paperwork. Read the paperwork that came with your canner to know exactly how much to fill for each one. But for this Miro, if you have the exact one I have, we fill it about 3/4 the way up the jar for meat, halfway up the jar for vegetables.
Can you use Vaseline?
I mean, I don't use Vaseline for anything ever, but you could, I'm sure.
I'd use a vegetable oil.
Mark said he wouldn't recommend using petroleum. Okay. Let me make sure we don't miss nothing here. Now remember, if you're just logging on, I see we have a lot of people just now joining us. Be sure that you follow Rada, R-A-D-A. It's at Rada Cutlery and at Rada Kitchen Store. They sponsored this so that you could have it for free. Let's see here. I don't think I've missed anything else. But if I have, click that bubble with the question mark in it and put it in. I can't see comments on, let's see, Michelle asked on YouTube, how long do you pressure can the pints? Pints and quarts both are gonna be 30 minutes. These are quarts. I don't do anything in pints, except jam sometimes. Okay, so we're getting to the boil. You can see it's starting to boil. And we're gonna come and put the lid on here in just a second.
I always put it on a little sooner than you like.
I do, you do. Okay, now once your water is bubbling like this, that's when you put your lid on. And again, remember that safety valve is facing the wall, not the outside.
Yeah.
And he's
all
latching it
on.
on.
Get a little steam out of this till it seals its normal.
Yes, the safety valve will steam just a little bit, and that's normal until it seals.
Same over here with this locking
And yeah.
mechanism, maybe.
So this handle that looks like this on the opposite side, you might get a little steam coming out around here in this area
Till it seals.
until it seals.
The pressure locks it in.
Let me see, I think I gotta move you guys so you can see a little bit better. So I was saying that the steam may come out here. You're on YouTube, it'll come out here a little bit, but it'll be on that opposite side.
Will this be recorded for later?
This will be recorded for later reference. Okay, do you have a little plus sign? Oh, you're asking somebody else, sorry. Make sure I don't miss something. Remember, if you have questions, please use that question bubble to the right. Okay, the winner was Janine Jelenic on the first drawing, and we're getting ready to do the second one. Are you gonna spin through and pick some? Yeah, it has to be, you have to be on here and to win.
This lady right here. This winner.
Reinventionville, I moved it. Hold on.
Yeah, she's been there since the beginning.
Reinventionville.
Jen.
Jen at Reinventionville is the winner of the second one. I gotta write that down. So the second giveaway winner is Jen at Reinventionville. And the first one was at Janine Jelenic. Okay, so that's our two winners. Pressure canning intimidates you. You're learning so much. Listen, don't be intimidated by this. It's no harder than cooking. I promise. You're just cooking. That's it.
So what are they watching and waiting for?
Okay, so right now, you can hear the bubbling is getting more and more and more. Steam, you can't see it, but steam is venting out of here really good and really, really hot. Don't put your hand over it. It's coming out of this stem. And you can see it's, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it's kind of coming out right here too. It's almost time to put the weight on. Let me show them the weight.
That's older than you are.
This is older than me.
I'm saying something.
Here's the weight. Okay. If you live below 2,000 feet, you will pressure can at 10 pounds. If you're like me and you live in the mountains and you're above 2,000 feet, you're going to pressure can at 15 pounds. The way that you see how it has an opening below it? The opening below the 15 is for 15 pounds. The opening below the 10 is for 10 pounds. If you have a dial gauge pressure canner, you're still going to have a weight that goes on, and then you're going to watch the dial gauge until it gets to the proper pressure. So it's about time. It's been venting really good now for a few minutes. I'm going to put that on just like that, and we're going to give it a few minutes, and you will start to hear the rhythmic sound of the pressure canner. We're still on high heat at this point, and we'll leave it on high until we get to pressure and everything's exactly where it needs to be. And you'll notice the sound. Once you've pressure canned one time, you will never forget the sounds. If you've water bath canned, you know the sound of a jar sealing. You never forget that sound. Once you pressure can, you'll never forget the sound that the weight is supposed to make. It is one of a kind. So I'm going to talk to you about the sounds that it does make, and you can see this is starting to bulge out a little bit. Don't panic.
That's how it seals.
I've been pressure canning for 41 years, have never blown one out yet.
A little bit of steam's coming over
A little bit of steam will come out around the handle on the opposite side.
because the steam is what triggers the safety.
Right, the steam is what triggers the safety valve to come up and lock on the other side on that handle, which you can't see, but don't panic. Don't panic. We're just pulling water, folks. I promise. Everything's gonna be okay. If you're afraid of canning, you are 10 steps ahead of not blowing up your canner because you're not gonna forget that you're doing it. It's people who've been canning a long time that say, I got 30 minutes on that canner. I'm gonna run out and hang the clothes up while it cans, and then they get busy with something else, and that's how that happens. Okay, so we're waiting on this. Now I'm gonna tell you about the sounds that makes. The first sound that you're gonna hear come out of it when it first starts to build pressure is going to be an erratic and you can hear it starting to build up. You hear it? In just a minute, you'll hear this, the lock come up on the handle on the far side. And then this will start to make that sound that's not exactly rhythmic. It's like you're starting, like a train starting to go, but it's not quite going just yet. Get ready. You can hear it when that safety goes in that handle. I can hear it getting close. It gets to 240 degrees, I believe is what the temperature on it is. Yeah, it's very hot. Okay.
I want to ask how long it typically takes for canning meats, just in general, not specific.
To pressure can meats is always going to be 90 minutes. Right now we're just listening for this seal over on this side. Yeah, if you pay attention, you'll hear the sound of that handle locking.
There's so much steam pressure for it to engage.
Yeah.
Once it's engaged, you couldn't twist that lid off?
No, you couldn't. There's no way.
Until the steam releases it later, you couldn't twist it off if you tried.
So, we'll just wait here for
See?
it stop. Did you hear how it stopped making the sound?
And you don't see the steam over here.
And
It
there's
was
no,
coming out.
you couldn't see it, but there was steam coming out from around right here on this other side, and it's no longer coming out. And if you watch this, it's going to start to like pop a little, like not pop up, but it's like going to have a little bit of bubbles of water around it,
And then that'll quit. when
and
it
then that
seals.
will also quit. And then you'll start to get the pressure coming out of the weight.
And there's already pressure under this weight.
Yes,
Just not enough
To lift
until
it.
you let that set it.
right.
So it's already got some pressure. You have to be aware.
Yes.
Don't be fearful. Both your seals have sealed. This one has sealed. That one has sealed now. There's no little bubbles. There's no steam there. It came up just a hair because the bottom was pushed by the steam.
Yep.
And that's what makes the seal. The steam is holding the seal in place. And also this locking mechanism.
Yes.
Right.
We don't have to be afraid. How long you been around pressure canning, Mark? 58 years? 57 years?
I beg your pardon.
How old are you?
43
You are not.
and a half.
You are not. 57?
First little bit don't count, you told me.
That first little bit don't count. He's 57. He's been around pressure canning his entire life. I'm 41 because I'm much younger than him. In case y'all didn't know that, I'm just a young spring chicken.
Yeah.
And but I've been around it 41 years. Literally, Mommy wore me in a baby carrier canning in the kitchen with Mama on them. Have you ever blown up a canner?
No?
No. Have I ever blown up a canner?
No.
I just got a lid stuck one time. Now he's gonna move this so you can see it.
See?
See the pressure?
But not enough for our setting, our temperature.
But y'all don't do that. Don't mess with it once you get it going.
But it's already in there. It's already engaged all your safeties. It's doing its thing, it's just building up to the right setting, the right temperature, the right pressure.
Right. And like I was saying, when it first starts to make the sound, you're going to hear it erratic, like you do not start your timer. Do not start your timer until it is going rhythmically, and I'm going to show you what that sounds like. You'll never forget it once you hear it. And that's when we start the timer. When I start my timer, I'll tell you. And then in just a couple minutes after that, we'll tell you what else we do.
I do not leave it on high the entire time, not on gas.
No. Somebody asked a question. We got to stop and pause. You mentioned 30 minutes for canning vegetables. That's not for all vegetables. That's for this. Your times and your contents of your jars will change. The rules for canning, for how clean you need to be and peeling the vegetables, and all that won't change. The wiping the rim won't change. The contents determine the time. So for green beans, we do 35 minutes.
I'm not sure potatoes are good.
For potatoes, it's 90.
I don't know.
No, sweet potatoes is 90 minutes.
Potatoes are 90 minutes.
Potatoes, I think, are 35.
Because we slice them.
Yeah, because they're sliced.
Each are different.
These are 30. We have a pressure canning course, and it includes a book that tells you the time for all kinds of stuff. But for this, it's 30 minutes.
Once it starts jiggling, not a second before, and you gotta let it stabilize first.
And you got to make sure that your jiggler's doing the correct thing. I will tell you when we start our timer so that you'll understand when you should start yours. And this is the rule for any time you're pressure canning. The time that you start your timer is only once it's rhythmically rocking and making that correct sound. Now let me check the question box here. If you don't have a canner, do you have tips, pros or cons of different kinds? I see 2 kinds on your Amazon page. For me, I'm always going to go with Made in America. That's the most important thing for me because the economy of my own nation means more to me than the economy of around the world. That's why we do things like use rated knives, use Miro canners that were made in America that are 150,000 years old. And All American is made in America. So that's the thing. It's what your priorities are, and mine are always going to be made in America. So I'm going to go with the All American canner. And I'm always going to buy, all my knives are Rada. Rada's made in America. Rada's been made in America since 1948. My great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, myself, and now a 5th generation of my family is using Rada knives. And that's my children because they're both adults, and one's married and has the family of his own. And that's what they ask for Christmas and birthdays is Rada knives.
That's what they're gonna get anyway.
That's what they're going to get.
Now, a little water is coming out the bottom of this. That's because there's a lot of water in here, bubbling, steaming, building up pressure. That's fine. When it starts jiggling, all that'll go away, but it's not time to start yet. It knows what it's doing.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm kind of embarrassed. Our canner looks like it's been through World War II and all these
It
other
probably
decades, and it literally probably has. So
Hurricaners is
I'm not scrubbed it. over
forever old.
Somebody's
This one's
teaching you
older
pressure
than me.
canning, and their canner looks like they just got out of the box. I don't know.
Yeah. If
It's
you're
fine to
getting,
just get it out of the box. That's great.
yeah, getting it out of the box is great. But if the person teaching you canner just come out of the box, I'd ask them where their old canner is. I want to see that first. Okay, you can see a little bit of water is coming down and bubbling. That's normal. Don't panic. Don't panic. Everything's fine, guys. There's nothing to be afraid of.
I wonder if they can hear that.
Can you guys hear the sound? That you can hear it bubbling and boiling inside. And you can hear the little hiss that this is making.
Somebody said our canner looks great.
Well, I'm glad somebody thinks so.
So next time I go to inspection, I'm going to point you to Christine Schwab. She says it looks great.
Nobody ever say nothing about my canner. Okay. So, let's see here. Is there anything I have forgotten to tell you? I told you that Rada sponsored this, and let me tell you how Rada came to sponsor this. I love Rada. My grandmother left me a bunch of Rada. Rada is one of those brands, kind of like DC Crystal Sugar and White Lily Flower and Miro canners that we've used for generations. Swansdown cake flour that we've used for generations. So I don't have a lot of affiliate links. I'll share some stuff on Amazon sometimes, but most of the time I'll share something that we've used for many, many generations, like Rada. And so I reached out to them and I really asked them if I could be their girl, and they kind of haven't let me be their real girl yet. I want to be their one and only. But, and I asked them if they would sponsor this, and I told them all about us and how long we've been using their knives, and they said, absolutely, and we'll also do 2 free gift sets for your followers. You just give them away during that canning session, and so that's what we've been doing. But that's how Rada came to sponsor it, is I asked them. They didn't ask me, I asked them.
That's how much we believe in the product. Now, explain about different kind of heating and stoves and ranges.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, you should not be canning on a glass top stove unless you have read your manual for your glass top stove, and your manual for your stove says that it is rated for this. Otherwise, don't use a glass top stove. Go get you a camp stove and can on it. Electric stoves with the coil work for canning, and that's just not my favorite, because the coil heats up and cools down and heats up and cools down. It's a little more difficult to manage. You about have to do it on high all the time. With gas though, it's instant heat and instant off. So that's how I like to cook, is with gas. And it doesn't change. The flame is what the flame is. It doesn't change. So right now I have it set on high, and once it starts to rock rhythmically, we'll do some adjusting on it. We'll go on high until this starts to rock the way that it should. But so that's something else that you need to know. Don't be trying to pressure can on a glass top stove unless you have put your very own eyes onto the manual that came with your stove. You will bust it all to pieces. And on an electric coil, you're probably going to have to leave it set on high to not much below high, because it goes on and off, on and off. You can use a camp stove. I think you can get a camp stove for about $125 and can outside, and then you ain't heating up your house while you do it. That's what Mom and Dad do, because Mom has a glass top stove. You can use, yeah, and when you can in winter, it does heat the house. Our gas heat doesn't cut on at all during winter while we're canning. We can all year round. Okay, so did you hear how that started? Hold on one second, I'll answer you. You see how it's erratic right now? That's what it's supposed to do. This is when people start to panic. Don't panic. This is what it's supposed to do, guys. See how erratic it is? Let's get this up to where it's supposed to be, and then we'll talk about it. See, our timer is not started yet. Our timer is not started. Okay. See how it's constantly doing it. There's nothing erratic about it. It's still on high right now. Our timer is getting ready to start. and we're gonna start it for 30 minutes. Yeah. Once it's really going good, if your heat's a little too high on your canner, it may start to vent more, and it'll be like doing this, and then it'll go shh for prolonged times, and that's how it vents that extra steam that it doesn't need out. So when it starts to do that, we will turn down to about 7 on our gas, and then later on, if it's doing it some more, being like shh for a longer time, we will go down to about 4 or 3 on the gas. But this is what your canner's supposed to sound like, guys. This is when most people begin to panic. Don't panic. It's supposed to do this. This is what it's supposed to do. That's how you know that it has reached the pressure. Okay. Where's my canning funnel from? It came from my grandma. Actually, it came from my great-grandma. But I have them linked in the link on my bio in Instagram. Few of your Rada knives are engraved from the store I purchased them from. Does Rada engrave each store names on their knives? I don't work for Rada, so I can't tell you that. I have never seen Rada engrave knives. That may be something that's done aftermarket. But that's a good question for Rada. I wish they were here to answer it for you. And I will make sure to look and be sure that there is a stainless steel funnel in my link tree when finish up with this canning. Okay, so just so y'all know, which I've already told you, that our timer has started. This is what it should sound like for the entire 30 minutes. When that 30-minute timer goes off, all you do is turn the heat off. If you're using an electric range, turn it to off. If you're using a gas range, turn it to off. And walk away. Don't touch it. Don't touch the weight. Don't touch the lid. Walk away from it for about 45 to 60 minutes. And then whenever about an hour has passed, walk over. You saw when we were taking that lid off, I could touch it. I mean, it was hot, but I could touch that lid. And then Mark took those tongs and lifted it and showed you no steam was coming out. When you take this weight off, there should be no release of steam other than just like water vapor. There should be no pressure behind it. If you remove the weight too soon, that's when your jars siphon. So don't do that. Make sure that you leave this. You can even let it go totally cool. Let that canner go totally cool. And then open it after 2 or 3 hours. It won't hurt anything. The ones that we showed you back at the beginning of the video when we took it out, they're all sealed already. So I'm glad that you commented again, Last Day Warrior, because I almost forgot to answer your question. How good is your canned food good for? How long is your canned food good for? You've asked a loaded question, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you. You, first of all, are going to store your canned food in a single layer, not stacked. You're going to store it without the ring. So after the jar has gone totally cold on whatever you can, we wipe, like tomorrow evening, we'll wipe the jars, we'll remove the ring from the jar, and it'll just be the jar with this lid that is suctioned down and sealed onto it. A good seal, you'll be able to lift the whole jar by the flap and it won't come off, okay? So then you're going to store it unstacked with the ring part of it not on it. Do not store. I know that new studies say you can store it with the ring on it. Don't do it. Do it the old way. Take the ring off. Because if your lid fails, you want to know it. If you have a ring on it and your lid fails, it could get a false seal. Take the ring off. You'll never have a false seal ever. Okay.
What happens if you get not a great seal?
Wait, let me talk about this first. To know if it's sealed, there's a little button in the middle of these. It'll go down, up and down. You'll be able to feel it. It should be down if it's sealed. If you can pop it around and feel like a button pushing up and down in the middle of that, it's not sealed. And you need to reprocess it or eat it right away. You can put it in your fridge and eat it within 2 days, okay? Now, if you open your canner and a jar is crinkled, like the lid is bent, sit it over, put it in a refrigerator after it's cooled. You gotta eat that within 2 days. What makes the lid bend in the canner is not enough headspace or tightening too tight. Okay, now, if you have a good jar that has a seal that's down, and it's not been stored with the ring, and it's not been stored stacked, then this jar of food, the people in the capital say is good for 18 months. My granny told me it was good until the seal failed, and that's how I operate. So you do what makes you feel good about it. So what happens after 18 months is not, let me turn you around here. Let me turn you around here. Can you see me? Okay, hold on. I gotta turn my YouTubers around too. Oh my goodness. Woo. Oh. Hold on. You can get this one. Let me turn these people around too. Okay. So what happens at 18 months? Nothing magical happens at 18 months. What happens at 18 months is that the texture of the food might begin to change. It's not going to be bad. There's nothing that happens magically that's like, oh my gosh, now this food is dangerous and it contains botulism because it's 18 months old. Speaking of, that's a big fear for people with all types of canning, so let's talk about that really quickly. Botulism does not generate out of nothingness. Botulism comes from the soil. That's why you're washing your produce. That's why you're washing your hands. That's why you're washing your jars, your lids, everything. Botulism will not just generate from nothingness. It's there when that jar is made. If you're concerned about that, pressure canning kills it. That's why you do it for the certain amount of time. And make sure that you're at the correct pressure. That'll kill it. But you're not going to get botulism just because the lid failed. I wouldn't eat it if the lid failed, but that's not what that means, okay? That just means that your seal failed. As I said, botulism doesn't generate ex nihilo. It's from soil. If you're clean, your jars are clean, your vegetables are washed, peeled, and done as they should be done with, that's not going to be an issue at all. People worry about it, but it's maybe 2 cases in a year, and of those 2 cases, they're usually commercial. They're not usually home canning, because people who are home canning are generally pretty careful with everything. Okay, what are you saying?
2 questions that are very similar. How do you keep jars from breaking into the canner? And the second person asked, are older jars safe for canning?
Yeah, I wouldn't can with that one.
Right. Explain why. It's not really.
Okay.
It looks like it. But
Okay, so let's talk about that. All right. Older jars are fine for canning. All of my jars came from my grandma and my great-grandma. Sorry, I'm looking at 2 different places because I have 2 different cameras going, okay? You can reuse jars from the store sometimes if they're marked for it. They will say clearly that they're for that. don't reuse jars that are not marked for that, okay? So this is an old mayonnaise jar. I will ferment in this. I will not can in this. This is not meant for canning. I have old Kerr Ball Golden. Grab me a jar out of here, Mark. Kerr Ball Golden Harvest. This is a new jar.
Where would you like?
Grab me an old jar. Sorry, I'm gonna show you. They're okay for canning. You just always want to make sure you have a new lid, and you want to check for defects. Feel around it. Make sure there's no chips in there. Look down inside it. Make sure there's no chips in there. This one. See this? This is rusted around because it was crowded in. This, you have to scrub it until there's no rust on it. Okay? Let me show you one that's not. This one's old too. This is just an old ball jar. They're fine to can in and reuse for many generations. I'm paused due to poor connection. Let me see what'll happen here. Okay, am I back with you guys? Okay. So it's okay to use old jars. I wouldn't use ancient jars. I have some jars that are older than my parents and they're 73 years old. I wouldn't use those just because they're precious to me. But there's no reason that you shouldn't necessarily. It's just that they're precious to me and I would hate to lose one of Mama's jars. Mark has turned it down now to 3 on the gas, by the way, and you can hear it. Hear that canner? When I'm canning, I'm not looking at my canner. I'm listening. I can with my ears, not my eyes, guys. Okay, so you can use old jars. Just make sure that they're meant for canning. If you have old ball jars, Kerr jars, Golden Harvest jars, I even have some by a brand named Lamb from probably the 30s. That would be perfectly fine to can in. Make sure that you use a new lid. There's different brands of lids that you can use, you know, Ball, Kerr, Golden Harvest. I like Tatler. That's what I grew up on. So you just choose, but always feel around the edge of your thing. Always store with the rings off. Always store single layer, not stacked. And you'll always be able to just walk in there and lift by that lid, and you'll know if your seal is good. And you always want to, I'm going to pop this out here for you too. Whoever's recipe that you're using to can with, especially if it is pressure canning of a low acid food, make sure that there's somebody who actually knows and they didn't just Google it. Because not every recipe online is trustworthy. A really good resource for a good canning recipe is Ball Blue Book of Canning. If your grandma gave you a recipe, Mama loves you. You can trust that. But if a stranger on the internet gave you the recipe, and it's not me who's been doing it for 41 years, and my parents and everybody back in my generation has been doing it, I would question that, and I would ask them, where did you learn this recipe? How many times have you done it? And that sort of thing. Okay, so, you hear my canner still going? We should almost be at 30 minutes. No? We got 13 minutes left, he said. All right. And back to the question at hand. The people in D.C. who say 18 months, my mama said as long as the seal's still good, as long as the rings were off and the jars were unstacked. And the texture may diminish as it gets closer to 2 years old, but it's still going to be okay. As it gets older and older, which I've ate canned foods that were, 5, 6, 7 years old, the texture can be a little softer in those, but most of the time they're fine. Mark says there's a question. How do you know when to turn temperatures down? You mentioned turning it down to 7 and then to 3. So we turn it down based on how we hear, like what we hear. If it's rocking really fast, we know we can turn it down a little bit because we don't want it to get too high in pressure. You just, whatever that you do when you adjust your temperature, that sound, you hear it? That's the sound you want to hear. If it's erratic, it's not high enough pressure. If you're using a dial gauge, you can watch it. You just want to stay at pressure. If it goes above your pressure, turn the heat down a little bit and get it right back to pressure. If it goes below pressure, your timer starts over and you have to get it back to pressure and then start your timer over. Okay, we got any more? I see Bree has joined us. So while we're sitting here waiting on this to finish out, how many of you were affected by this hurricane? We have 12 minutes left. How many of you were affected by the hurricane? Because I live in the Appalachian Mountains. You would have never thought that it affected us, but it absolutely has. It, like to God, is good. Oh, how do you prevent jars from breaking during pressure canning? Did you see the rack that I showed? When you put that rack in and it's facing correctly, it'll have Mark's going to get it for you. And I'll show you again. And it's got that space. So that space is an insulator. And it's going to keep your jar from sitting directly on the heat, and then your jar won't break. There's been an issue. Sorry. There's been an issue with newer jars. And, sorry, I moved the wrong one. There's been an issue with newer jars, and I can't speak for people, their brands, but I can just tell you there's been an issue with newer jars. But always put your rack in with this lip part facing down on the bottom of your canner. You should be able to stick your finger in a little bit. There needs to be space between your bottom of your pan and your jar, and that's what this rack does. That'll keep your jars from breaking. Use a quality jar. Sometimes some of the newer jars, there's just some issues with them for the last couple years. Stuff happens, but I use old jars for that reason. I gotta get a drink, I'm sorry.
Not all the glass jars that come with something else in the store is a pressure canning jar.
Oh yeah. And just because the jar's glass doesn't mean it's meant for pressure canning. And you should not, unless it's labeled that you can reuse the jar, you shouldn't reuse the jar for canning. It's done differently, and they're not necessarily they're not doing it in pressure canners like we're doing it at home, okay? So that's different. All right, I see. Let's talk about this part. Is there a book you recommend for beginners who don't have someone close to learn from? And Heather's right. So Heather's watching. You might do everything just exactly right, and you still might break a jar. Heather is another person you can learn from. That is my best friend who is with me every week here. Y'all see her sometimes. But sometimes jars break. That's just part of it.
I'm going to ask what's the easiest thing to learn with?
The easiest thing to learn with is, oh, it's all the same. I mean, meat takes a lot longer, so probably not meat, but green beans, string them, break them, wash them, string them, break them, put them in your jar. Cover them with spring water, put your canning salt. That's another thing. If you're not making this specific recipe, if it calls for salt, it means canning salt. It does not mean table salt. Table salt will, it's iodized. I don't use it for anything ever, but table salt will discolor your vegetables. It causes rust is what they call it. And don't use table salt for canning at all. Use canning salt. Mark's going to get some. Ours is in Mylar. It says on the box, canning and pickling salt. So make sure that you are using canning salt. We got 7 minutes left. And then we're just going to turn the heat off. Is there a book I recommend for canning? I like the Bald Big Blue Book of Canning. I mostly use my granny's recipes. I will use recipes from Heather Baker. There's very few other people. I'll use Mark's memos and Mother's canning recipes, my mother's canning recipes. But for the most part, if it doesn't come from a source like that, I'm not canning it. It's got to be somebody that I'm either best friends with, like I am Heather, or some member of my family, or from Ball.
Or an old church cookbook with somebody typing on a hand typewriter.
Or Mark said it, you can trust an old church cookbook. that looks like somebody hand typed it on a typewriter. Those are few and far between anymore. But used to, you could get canning recipes from old church cookbooks, and they were really good. Okay, let's see here. Make sure I don't lose anything else. If you have any more questions, be sure that you drop them. I was asking about the hurricane. You would think it wouldn't hit us. We're in the highlands of Appalachia, that's literally the top of a mountain, but it about took us out. There was quite a bit of wind. It wasn't like 100-mile-an-hour wind or anything crazy, but it was a ton of rain, and it saturated the soil. And then we have old growth forests, gigantic trees, creeks swelled out of their banks, and the roots of the trees failed, and trees just fell all over the place. I think Heather's still cutting herself out over there. Let me see, make sure I don't miss nothing else. So that's what happened up here. I've been really worried about people in Florida and in lower lying areas. Yeah, we had no power for a while. And that's when that happens here. So let's talk about that. We had no power here for about 8 hours, something like that. And so we got out our jars. So this is the good thing about canning. When you have home canned food, not frozen food, you can't take it out and eat it straight out of the jar. We have home canned food, you can take those jars out and you can eat directly out of the jar. You don't have to heat it or nothing because it's already cooked. It's already safe as long as you did it for the proper amount of time at the right pressure. You just open it and eat it. You can heat it on, your grill or wood fire or whatever you want to cook over if you want to, but otherwise you don't have to. You can eat it straight out of the jar. That's one bonus about learning to pressure can and to water bath can. Here's a question I get pretty frequently when I'm teaching canning is, can I water bath whatever it is that I might be pressure canning? So can I water bath green beans? That's low acid, don't do that. Same thing for carrots or potatoes. There are people on here who will tell you, don't do it. Don't. I'm advising you not to. As your friend who cares about you and doesn't want you to die. Pressure can what needs pressure can. Water bath what needs the water bath if that's what you want to do. But don't water bath what needs pressure can. And so that's another question that I get pretty frequently. Is there any more questions? Also, don't forget to follow Rada. Don't forget to send them a message and thank them because they sponsored this so that you could learn how to pressure can so that you could increase your self-sufficiency. Be sure to shop them. I shared a link in my stories on Instagram. Be sure to thank them, even if you can't shop them because the economy's hard right now. We all know that. But thank them. Thanking somebody is free.
And here's somebody that broke in on me. Oh Lord, they didn't get the Rada, did they?
That's right. That's what we were about, the Rada. That's our family treasures. Okay, let's see what else. I see other people are over here on YouTube commenting about the damage from the hurricane. Unicoi County, Tennessee got hit as hard as Letcher County got hit in 2022. It was Unicoi County, Tennessee up here has been absolutely pitiful. And I know Florida and down south, y'all are much worse off than anybody up here. But Unicoi has absolutely broken my heart because I love Unicoi. If you remember, if you've been around a while, that's where we went to the Strawberry Festival and took you guys with us and showed you around over at Unicoi at Irwin. Yeah, and when you see us, when we say, let's pop on down to Asheville, right there, I always film the section right there at Irwin, which is in Unicoi County. It has absolutely broken my heart to see the devastation. And down Asheville was devastated, where Allison is down a little past Asheville, absolutely devastated. We are just so sorry to see all this. And up here, we've been hit hard. Thankfully, our personal selves and our homes and the compound and our properties are fine. But there's a lot of places that weren't. Even up here in the mountains. It's so crazy, isn't it? We got 2 minutes left, 3 minutes left. And then we'll just be turning this off. And when we turn it off, guys, I'm going to log off. But you hear this? I monitor it with my ears. I don't use my eyes to can. Yep. And monitoring it with the ear is how we know when to turn it down. And when we turn it down, we continue to listen. Yeah, don't can the whole time on high. Do you pressure can yellow squash, even though it's not recommended anymore? Okay, so let me tell you something. The reason it's not recommended anymore is because the texture. The texture's not good. That's the reason it's not recommended. No, I don't do it. No, I don't. I don't like canned squash. No, it's like canning a booger. It's awful. Don't do it. I mean, yeah, y'all might. I'm not. No, absolutely not. So somebody asked this question a while back, and it was a really good question. You know, not every recipe that I can is approved, but that doesn't mean it's not a good recipe. You just have to know where those recipes come from, okay? So the reason that not every canning recipe is approved is because the government doesn't have time to test everybody and their mama's recipes. They wouldn't get nothing else done. So that's the reason that some recipes are not approved recipes. The one on the squash, that's because it's like canning a booger. It's pretty bad. I wouldn't recommend it. It's really bad. Yes. Mark wants me to mention this to you. We got about a minute or so before we turn this off. But listen, when you turn it off, it's not instantly going to stop jiggling. It'll still take a few minutes. You'll still hear it jiggling, and then it will slowly come back down to that erratic part, and then it'll stop jiggling all the way. And don't touch it. Don't touch it at all. So, yep, time turned off, he said. Okay. So that's turned off. You hear it still going. It's going to continue to go for a few minutes, and then it'll stop jiggling. We still don't touch it. Leave it alone for at least 1 hour or more if you want to. And then you can take that weight off after 1 hour. And then you can take that lid off, tilt it away from yourself, and then you can lift it out by those jar lifters that we showed you in the beginning of this video. And that way, and put it, when you move it over, number one thing I forgot to tell you and should have told you immediately, don't sit it directly on your cold stone countertop. Don't sit it on any countertop directly. Always put down a towel that's folded at least double. And don't put it, don't put it in your refrigerator either. It needs to come down from temperature by itself with no help from you. And put it on a folded, doubled up, folded bath towel that's really thick, and leave it alone. Don't touch it. Walk away. You'll hear it seal. As they start to seal, they sound like... And then Mark's letting you hear, he's pointing out how it's starting to slow down. You hear it? And he's going to, yeah, it's going to stop on its own in a minute. Don't sit it directly on your countertops. You hear how it... You hear it? The way it starts is the way it finishes. That still has pressure on it. Don't touch it. Do not touch it. The heat's off. Leave it alone. Walk away. Hear how it started back again? It'll do that on and off for the next probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then it'll stop altogether. And in an hour, we'll come back and open this lid and take the jars out. But remember, don't sit them directly on your countertops. Don't sit them directly on your stove. Fold up a bath towel in half, make it double thick, put your jars on that. Do you have any? This is the one from that we canned earlier. And you can see they're floating a little bit. It's fine.
And the button still.
Oh, and it's sealed. It's still hot though. Don't mess with this ring until tomorrow when it's totally cold, okay?
Wash your jars.
And then tomorrow you'll wipe your jars off once they're totally cold. Then you'll take this ring off, and then we'll store them on the shelves in there, and they'll be ready to eat. Okay, if you have any question, now's the time because we're about to pop off here.
Remind me who the 2 winners were.
The 2 winners, I wrote them down. Jen at Reinventionville and Janine Jelenic.
Yeah, she's on here. She's still watching.
1, I need you to DM me or email me at info@appalachianhomestead.org. Either one of those. DM me on Instagram or email me at info@appalachianhomestead.org with your address so that these can ship out to you. And I'll send it to Rada Monday morning, and then they'll ship it out at whatever. They usually take a day or so, and then they ship stuff out.
Heirloom knives.
And they are heirloom. Yeah, they are heirloom knives. Mine, as I was saying, I have my great grandma's knives, and I use them all the time. Don't ever put them in the dishwasher, no matter what anybody tells you. That's bad for any knife, anytime, anywhere, no matter the brand. Don't do that. Oh yeah, get a Rada sharpener. Thank you, Sean and Mark, and your sponsor, Rada. She ruined. Okay, I'm gonna give you a tip.
You're gonna fix it.
She ruined her Rada knife.
I was gonna wonder if you mentioned how to fix it.
Somebody said that they made a boo-boo and put their Rada knife in the dishwasher, and when that happens, let me show them the handle. When that happens, these handles ain't got a problem, but when that happens, the handle will get gritty feeling, and you can take steel wool and just scrub the boogers out of it, guys.
Doesn't take much.
Just absolutely scrub it till it's smooth again, and then take 1 drop of olive oil and rub on it, and then buff it really good with a clean cotton cloth.
And it's perfect.
And it's perfect, like new. But don't put your knives in the.
But it happens.
In the
and when it
dishwasher.
happens,
Sometimes-
you don't like the texture. Really.
Yeah, when it happens, I don't like the texture, and I also have a little fit on whoever accidentally done it.
Now they make these.
Now they make these, and they say dishwasher safe. Don't put your knives in the dishwasher, no matter what. It's not good for the blade. Period.
You can save it right. That didn't ruin it. You can save it.
I know you can save a Rada. Don't do it. It's not good. Be a good steward,
Right.
guys.
But if it
Be a good
happens,
steward.
Don't happen. If it happens, Rada's quality enough. You can
Oh
fix
yeah.
it.
So Rada, by the way, is backed by a lifetime warranty. So if you ever have a problem with the Rada knife and it's because of manufacturing defect or anything to do with the quality, they replace it. It's easy. So I will post these. They'll be available forever and ever. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to come back later in the week, and we're going to do some water bath canning. I'm going to do carrot cake jam. So if you have any questions, you can always DM us. You can always email us at info@appalachianhomestead.org.
Do you have any videos of you cooking with those carrots?
No, we don't have any videos of us cooking with those carrots.
You must have just been showing your friends because you cook.
Well, I do take pictures of it a lot, yes. Okay. All right. We'll catch you guys on the flip side. I'm so glad that you joined us today. Don't forget to thank Rada, and we'll be back later in the week, and we'll do some more free canning workshops. We'll see you guys later. Let me turn everybody off now.